Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Clues, Cues and Reviews, and today we're looking at the finale, the final chapter of Bleach 686, Death and Strawberry. It's been a long journey, 15 years in serialization, and it's finally come to an end. Not the ending probably people wanted, but it's the one that we've got. Quite a few different talking points. We had an announcement that they're going to make a live action movie at some point. How that's going to turn out, I don't know, because if you look at the previous live action adaptations of any kind of manga, really, if you look at Attack on Titan, it wasn't really good. Still watched it, wasn't really good. Dragon Ball, atrocious, not very good at all. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, they're making Death Note, they're doing all sorts when it comes to live kind of action adaptations of manga or comics. In any case, 5 main talking points and a few things to discuss at the end, so let's get into it. Point number 1, and this is just for me my important considerations of the chapter. Point number 1 was the flashback ending or death of Yuha, and it was the confirmation of his ideals kind of confirmed through Aizen, which I'll talk about later, and Yuha himself. And I guess the idea was the fear of death and having to die, and his plan was to unite Huecomondo, Serete and the Earth Realm to twist and convulge it in a way where death wasn't something you'd fear anymore, and it was the whole eternal life situation. So it was interesting to finally get that. Although we got in a flashback, we finally get his ideals, and in a way he was mean to do good, but in a way he did it to such a degree that it was quite twisted and hurt a lot of people. But it's an interesting idea to get the villain's perspective, I guess, even though it was for a very short period of time and in the last chapter. But yeah, that's point number 1. Point number 2 was the fact that Aizen's alive and still in prison. You'd think for what he did in the last couple of chapters to help Serete that he'd get some type of pardon. Maybe they reduced his sentence or something like that, because you got a crazy sentence to begin with. It was 100 years or something, 166. I can't remember the exact figure, but they may have reduced it. But to be fair, he was still tied up, and I think he's even more restrained now than he was originally. So it was interesting to get to see him alive. We didn't get to see his Bankai, but we'll touch on that in a second with everything else at the end. But he's alive, and he gave his kind of 2 cents of Yuha ideals. What I found interesting was his monologue about courage and the idea of facing the realities and fears of life and being able to take those step forward in life and face them head on. Having the courage to do so, as something that Yuha didn't consider. So an interesting little monologue, and good to see that Aizen is alive, even though he was a villain and he did some crazy shit. But yeah, point number 2. Now, point number 3 came towards the end of the chapter, but I thought it was a really cool kind of thing to do. It was very Naruto-esque, I guess, in the sense that he ended it in a very similar way. We got to see the offspring and the pairings of the characters of this manga, Orihime with Ichigo, and Rukia with Renji, and we got to see their kids, Ichika and Kazui, and then both ending as Shinigami, kind of like the initial meeting between Rukia and Ichigo was probably a good way to end the chapter. Some people are going to be happy with it, some people aren't, but I just thought it was an interesting kind of dynamic to involve. And it's like I said, it's a very Naruto-esque in that's how they ended the Naruto series. So I like the fact that he went in that direction, and it wasn't the most fulfilling and it wasn't answering all the questions, but it was an ending indeed. So that's point number 3. Point number 4 is to do with the Yuha situation, especially with the energy. So as we know, with the end of the chapter last time, which was 2 weeks ago, there was the whole situation where they found some of the energy, and everyone came around. So we had Byakuya there, we had the second division, or was it the first? Soifong, basically, commander was there, and the commander or the captain for the research facility was already there. So that looked kind of cool, but then all of a sudden it disappeared. We had a little bit with Kazui, and then later on it was a little bit, and then for some reason Ichika came out of it. Now here's an interesting thing to bear in mind. We know that Yuhabak had the ability to change the future in this story. That was his power. Could it be conceivably possible that he was planning to do something 10 years in the future? Remember, one of his statements was about the idea that you're always going to live in fear of death, because wherever you enjoy yourself the most, that's when I'm going to give you the most despair. And this time in the story, in this chapter, that's what's happening. And I think that's the time he wanted to pick, because he knew looking into the future that this would be a time where they'd be the most happiest and be the perfect time to give him despair, maybe by killing Ichika, maybe by killing Kazui, and maybe by returning. So the idea that he was planning that, and maybe that's what he was doing at the time of his death, was possibly why he returned 10 years into the future. Now the idea that why it disappeared, there's a lot of already rumours kicking about that it was something to do with Kazuya, maybe the idea of his mother's powers to reject, or just the fact that he had Shinigami powers that did the damage. Hard to say, but I think it's more of a case of just kind of coincidence, in the sense of, as he was planning to survive 10 years in the future, the final slash hit him in the past, and basically, the parallels of time and seeing the future couldn't really save him, so he didn't have enough time to basically put as much energy as he could into the future so he could return, and he basically got dealt with. So that's point number 4. Point number 5 was pretty much a good chunk of this chapter, and it was just the meetup of friends. So there was a whole element, we got to see all the new character designs of Ichigo, Orihime, his sisters, his school friends, Rukia, Renji. We got to see them all, and they all met up so they could see their friend Chad go for the WBO heavyweight title fight. So effectively Chad became a heavyweight boxer, which makes sense, because if you look at the size of him and his fighting style, it was all about punches, and with the type of power he did have and the extra powers, that superhuman powers he had, I'm sure he can pretty much knock out most people. So that idea that he became a boxer seems pretty cool to me. Why it took him 10 years, I'm not sure, but bearing in mind he's meant to be 18 originally, and he's probably about 28, 29 when this match is happening. It makes sense, because a lot of people tend to fight for the belts in that time period. Anyway, that was quite cool, and there's a lot of things that were left unanswered. We didn't see Bankais, we didn't see what happened with a lot of characters in their futures, as in like, did they change character design, nothing like that. We didn't see what happened with Grimjow and a lot of other things. So there was a lot of plot holes and questions, not answers, but this is the best we're going to get for a series that was rushed at the end. So it was really an interesting way to end the chapter. A big farewell to the Bleach series as a whole. We do have a live action manga adaptation coming up, a movie, so we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed it's halfway decent. But what I did forget to mention throughout this video is every week there's always a section of Shonen Jump that covers comments. It gets released on Monday, so Monday coming up is when it'll officially be released. But there's a comment section, all the different authors of the the mangakas that have their own different series all kind of said their final farewells as well, and I thought that was pretty cool. A good way to end, a send off. It wasn't the best of endings, but like I said, it's the ending we're gonna get. So quick few points, a lot of questions left unanswered. Nice way to end it anyway. So I guess this is my way of saying goodbye to the series I followed for so long, and let's see what happens next. So thank you very much for watching the video. If you liked anything I discussed in the video, please give me a thumbs up. If you enjoyed the series or the chapter, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I greatly appreciate that, and I'll see you next time. Peace.